I'm in my blankie. Why am I in my blankie? Because you're about to hear a really scary story. It comes from one of our friends from the page. His name is Paul, and he is from Lords of October. He is an accomplished author and was more than happy to share one of his ghost stories. You've got a special mission tonight, witches. What you need to do from here is like, comment, and share. And when you do that to this video, you will be entered in a drawing to win a copy of Paul's book. He's going to read a little bit for us now. Are you ready? Let's tell some spooky ghost stories for the holiday season.
Hi, I'm Paul Counelis. I'm an author, aka Uncle Salem, and I'm going to read a Christmas story today from my most recent anthology book. But the funny thing is, I'm not known for someone who would probably be reading a Christmas story. I'm more known for Halloween stuff. My band is called Lords of October, and at my house we do a free home haunt every year called Scarage Town in Flint, Michigan. And so yeah, I kind of have more of a reputation for the Halloween and the horror stuff. I have a few dozen books out, mostly about horror and Halloween, but I do have one Christmas book. But I'm not going to be reading from that today. But I am going to read a Christmas story. It's from my newest book. It's called Walking Backwards Around the Witch's Grave 12 Times at 3 a.m. That's the name of the book. The story is kind of a dark story. Oh, and we're going to give away a copy of the book. So I was thinking, if you like and comment, and we'll choose somebody from random and send a copy of the book, then that would be pretty cool, right? So I think we'll go with that. We'll figure that out. But this is called Being a Ghost Story of Christmas Eve. And it is from my most recent anthology, which is a 4-story anthology. Walking Backwards Around the Witch's Grave 12 Times at 3 a.m. It's available on Lulu.com. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all those cool places. So, yeah, it's a really dark story, and without further ado, I'm going to read Being a Ghost Story of Christmas Eve. Even today, in the sheer commercial lighting of a crowded media world, the shadows play along the walls from moonlit backlight and cast forth the voices of another era. We pretend by day to be too busy for the reality of anything existing beyond the TV, the internet, the grocery store. But at night, we turn off the lights, and in the dark of our rooms we confront the inevitable. That time, the essence of the natural world outside, the uncaring victor of every waking mind, dances with or without our permission. And in that night, which we again pretend to have fully apprehended with our mockeries of its apathetic spirituality, the scrape of a branch against the side of a house becomes whatever our own minds allow it to become. For my own part, there has never been a question that I have led a haunted life, haunted by dreams, haunted by failures, by expectations, a hollowed-out haunted city in a forgotten side of the Midwest. But beyond that, the feeling of something more. Something just out of my perception was always present as a child. I woke once to a figure standing over my bed. I blinked, but it did not go away. No one believed me, of course. My parents suggested I was half awake. And maybe I was, but it still struck fear somewhere deep in the depths of my soul. The kind of fear that fills your head with goose pimples and makes you feel as though every inanimate object around you has suddenly come alive. The kind of fear that dooms you to always sleeping with the light on. Always, even as a man. One night as a teen in my room, I felt something sit down beside me. Could have been the cat, yes, but of course we didn't have one. Something pressed the bed down next to my legs, and I opened my eyes, thinking it was my sister. It was not. Sometimes in that same room I could feel that eyes were watching me from every corner, and when the nightmares began to come, I knew that those same eyes were focused intently on my sleep. Whether that makes any sense is another story. I don't know what good it would do, for any unseen being to watch someone in that way. I never stopped to think about what motivation would lead to that occurrence. I just know that it was scary and ghoulish in the darkest, most evil kind of way. Who am I that any energy would pause to make my nights and therefore days such an entertaining exercise? I don't know. Maybe they were doomed to watch anyone who happened to call that place home. Not a planned fate at all, just random haunting by some thing for no real reason other than circumstance. I, of course, have seen things that I won't divulge here. Calling out my own susceptibility to previous supernatural occurrences won't do this particular story any favors or lend it any added credence. But I can't keep quiet about it any longer. It has haunted me more than anything before or since. In November of 2013, I visited a small town in northern Michigan to visit my grandfather for Christmas. The plan was to stay for a few weeks and spend the holiday with him and my uncle. I hadn't seen them in years, and I had never been to their house. I would like to say that as soon as I walked in, I noticed some sort of pressing, heavy feeling, that the house itself had a dark presence of some sort, but that was not the case. It was a pleasant place with a nice atmosphere, and I did not feel uncomfortable or unwelcome. However, it only took a few days before I began to realize that there indeed was someone there aside from my family members and their little dog. As night dawned on an early December day, I laid in my bed and gazed at the ceiling with my eyes open. I heard an unidentified noise first, and I scarcely even bothered to look. But the next sound was unmistakable. "Hello?" A little girl stated clearly in a scattered voice, just louder than a whisper. I sat up and looked around. "Who's there?" "Please, don't be scared. Please," she trailed off. "No one will hear me. No one has heard me." I didn't say anything, but I scanned the room warily. "Well," I said slowly, "what is it that you want to say?" The voice sighed. "I am here. I have been here for decades." A shiver chilled me, but it wasn't the fear of previous experience. Rather, it was the knowledge that I was finally vindicated. Something else really was out there, and today it made itself known. "Why?" I gathered the coherence to ask. "Do you really want to know?" I didn't answer. "I can only tell you if you really want to know." That felt cryptic, but I really did want to know by now. The curiosity had gotten the better of me. "I really want to know. It's a horrible, awful thing, and it begins on Christmas Eve." I never settled in per se, but I did lean back a little as she began to tell me the most terrible story I'd ever heard. At a Christmas party in a large union hall on Christmas Eve, dozens of people, the majority of them children, had been trampled to death when a man shouted, "Fire." That sentence alone was enough to send me reeling, even without specific detail. "Why didn't people go through the big front doors?" I asked. She went away soon after, or at least fell silent until the next night, a night in which I woke to the perplexing words, "The doors opened inward." She didn't speak to me again for several days, and on December 15th, even though I hadn't forgotten the whispering little girl, I had managed to put it enough out of my mind to carry on with holiday festivities. My grandfather was so pleased that I had joined them, and we had a great dinner full of laughs and high spirits before I retired to the bedroom. On that night, though, things would change. It started as a whisper that wasn't truly audible, that is, I couldn't make out the words. Still, it was enough to wake me, and I sat up in a strange mixture of fear and fascination. I started to call out to my uncle in the adjacent room, but remembered her earlier words. "No one has heard me." Instinctually, I called aloud to her. "I have heard you." The room fell still. Finally, she said more distinctly, "I was so scared. I lost track of my sister." The room was a screaming sea of bodies, and I felt a pain in my side. I turned to see a man's foot crashing down on me. I put my hand over my mouth. This was a jarring, all too real account from someone who had actually been there. The next day at dinner, I asked my grandfather about the incident. "You mean the Italian Hall massacre?" my uncle offered. My grandpa gave him a stern look. The Italian Hall disaster, he corrected. Yes, it was truly terrible. There are even ongoing conspiracy theories about how and why it happened. Maybe Union violence related. Hundreds of people were there. My uncle raised an eyebrow. Why you wanting to know about this? I heard someone talking about it. It was very disturbing. Just wondering if there was truth to it. Grandpa sighed. The way I've heard it told, the man ran in from outside, jumped up on the stairs, and yelled "Fire!" twice. Some people made it out, but then one child tripped and fell, and, well, yeah, the rest. What you heard. Not really fun dinner conversation, but there it is. I was still disturbed and now even more hyper-aware when I returned to my room. I didn't want the girl to come back, but she did, at 3 a.m. People kept falling on me, she whispered directly into my ear. I froze, my eyes open wide. Stop. Please stop. I'm so sorry for what happened to you. I don't know how to help you. Their bodies pressed mine further and further into the floor. The sounds of voices became sickening thuds in the back of my mind. I stopped trying to struggle to get free. I covered my ears with my hands, but her voice somehow punctured the muffle and continued. And not only me. Tens of children, small children, left for dead under the panic of the crowd. Shrieks of terror filling the room so full and so completely that the sound became nearly a solid wall of the most grim white noise imaginable. Her voice was now louder than it had ever been, and I wondered if my uncle could hear it from his room. If he did, he didn't let on. She finally stopped, and I could feel that the room was clear of her presence again. This continued. Night after night leading up to Christmas, the child regaled me with the monstrous memories of the fateful Christmas Eve, details more and more vividly horrifying and aggressively disturbing, so much so that I shuddered even within my empathy. Because I wanted the stories to cease and the little girl to be freed from the binding chains that held her here, reliving the worst evening of her young life, the sad and hair-raising recollections of her final Christmas. But now, as much myself as for her. All joy of the season had been suspended since her most recent ghastly visits. I even tried to stay one night at a hotel, but she followed me there. Finally, on December 24th, I decided to venture out and find the site of that awful tragedy, and to beg and pray and whatever it took to release this child, and by extension, me, of its mandatory hold over her mortal soul and my own sanity. But when I arrived, there was nothing more than an archway left of the infamous building. I said a few prayers fervently and left feeling as though I had really accomplished nothing. That night, I decided, would be different. And at first it wasn't. I did go to bed hoping for an uneventful Christmas Eve night, but predictably, she returned, and ominously went into even further chapter and verse than she had on the most unbearable nights before. The last words I said were my mother's name, and I could feel myself becoming smaller and smaller underneath the stampede and force of the people above me. She whispered frantically, precisely, right into my mind. "No!" I yelled. I heard my uncle stir, and I tried to become quieter, but still forceful. "I don't know how to help you. Please, I beg of you, stop. I can't take any more." "But you said you really wanted to know." "And now I do," I gasped. And for the first time I sensed something more insidious in her voice, and it surfaced in the form of a grotesque small laugh. I scanned the room, mouth fully agape. "Where are you?" She didn't say anything. "Show yourself." A few seconds went by, and then she whispered back, "Do you really want to see?" I shuddered and swallowed hard. No, I did not want to. But by now, I had to. "Yes," I said under my breath, regretting it even as the words left my mouth. I'm not sure what I expected if she would materialize, but I know what I didn't expect, and it was what I saw. There, leaning directly into my face, breath as foul as the most spoiled meat you've ever smelled, and as real as any person you've ever known, stood a man. His eyes were wide with reckoning, wildly careening back and forth to one of my eyes and then the other. His mouth was wide open and unmoving, mocking my anxiousness. This wasn't a child at all. I knew right away and without a doubt, this was the man who shouted fire. And now, even while trapped in his own hellish doom of being bound to the place he once lived, He laughed at my misery. Merry Christmas.
Well, that didn't end it all the way I thought it would. And he has more in this book. Do you want a copy? Make sure that you like this video, that you share this video, and that you make a comment on this video. And what we will do is enter you in a drawing. We will draw on Friday, and one of you will win a copy of Paul's book. Did you like what you heard tonight? We've got more in store for you for this holiday season. Have a great night, and thank you so much for watching.